Hello there, and welcome to episode 46 of Little Big Knits. This is a podcast about knitting primarily. My name is Selma. I'm known as Selma Knits on Instagram and Ravelry, and I am coming to you from a sunny, cold Ottawa where I live with my family and our cat Yoda. And Yoda is somehow a little bit perturbed this morning. I can't quite figure out what. I think she thinks she hasn't had enough treat, because she always thinks that. I don't know what. So we'll see if she actually jumps up on me and starts trying to get me to get over there and do something for her. Anyway, hello and welcome today. Welcome to new subscribers as well as returning subscribers. I'm really glad actually that you guys enjoyed the retrospective of 2020 that I did last time. Lots of wonderful comments about that. Thank you so much. It's actually fun to, to look upon a year and kind of go, okay, so what actually happened in this last year? I also did a post on Instagram as part of the February challenge that's hosted by Creative Ceci. If you're not part of that, you can look up the hashtag. I'll put it down here in the down bar. And it was fun to think, because one of the prompts was to reflect on favorite makes from 2020. And it's difficult to choose just one, but it was a way to sort of put them together and create a post. And then I realized there was a lot of pink, green, and gray last year. That was kind of interesting to see the colors together and kind of realize that there was a little bit of a theme somehow that emerged. So anyway, I'm glad you enjoyed that retrospective, and hello. And I'm saying hello to you today, and so is Gertie, my cup. And today I actually have a latte in here as opposed to tea. I have discovered a barista style oat milk, and it has transformed my coffee experience. I can't do lactose a lot. I can do a tiny bit, but eventually it starts to really upset my stomach. And I don't really love almond milk. It doesn't froth regularly, and I don't love the flavor with coffee, but I discovered this oat milk, and so now I can have coffee. Although I have to say it's mostly decaf because I can't take a whole lot of it. But I had to drink it in my Gertie mug. And also you'll notice little Mr. Ramazan came to say hello. Hello. You can expect that he has a very deep voice. This is a really adorable little needle felted guy that my friend Holly made for me. When was that? I think 2 years ago now, was it? So anyway, he's been sitting on the other side of the living room and he decided to come over here for today. So before we begin with the knitting content, just a reminder that we have a color play knit along going on right now in the group until July. This is for color play, color work, different color play techniques such as brioche or intarsia or stranded, shadow knitting, double knitting. There's all kinds of slip knit patterns as well that create color play as well. And it's for any type of item. It doesn't have to be garment. It could be socks, hat, toy, whatever. So you're welcome to join in at any time. There is a loveliness happening in that knit along in the threads. There's a chatter thread as well as a finished object thread. And there's some beautiful makes that are emerging in there. So we're having a good time. And I'll be talking about my color play make that I finished last week, I guess, at some point in a moment. I still haven't done the prize giveaway for the other two cals, but I will do that very, very soon, I promise. All right, so without further ado, let's get on with the knitting, shall we? I hope I haven't forgotten anything else, but I feel like jumping in because I'm very excited about this last make. I finished my Colourwork sweater. This is the Silver Forest sweater by Jennifer Steingass, who is also known as knit.love.wool on Instagram and has designed over 30, I believe, over 30 Colourwork sweaters, and they're all beautiful. I was especially struck by this one a couple of years ago and bought the pattern, and then, as I've told you before, bought the yarn in Helsinki when I was there in the summer of 2018. So really, it's about time that I made this. I am missing the It's About Time Cal, I have to say, so we might have to reinstate that at some time soon. So I bought the yarn there, which was Pirkkalanka. I believe it's a 2-ply yarn that's non-superwash yarn, and it has a large selection of colors. And I spent a lot of time in Menita, the shop in Helsinki, going over colors. I had a sense of what I wanted, and I ended up getting it. It was wonderful. So I finally knit this. Last time I podcasted, I think I was in the body. I don't even remember where I was, but I remember telling you that it was an unusual construction because you start with a provisional cast on and go up, and then you pick up and you go down and down the sleeves as well. The rest of the body is just very plain, as you can see. I made it a little longer. It's a good, I think it's a 15-inch body, as opposed to the crop sweaters that are coming out these days that are somewhere between 11 and 13. I wanted this to be around the hips because it was more of a wintry sweater. So I made it a little longer. And the pattern actually offers you different waist shaping, straight, sort of a little bit of an hourglass thing, or A-line. And I actually chose the A-line, but I went at my own pace. I don't even remember what rows, like what they suggested in the pattern, but I just chose to go about every 15 rows. I didn't want it to be too A-line. I just wanted a tiny little bit. I don't think you can even really notice. It just ends up looking straight. But I wanted to be sure that it was just kind of like loose and cozy. And that's what I got. And otherwise, the knitting on this went really well. I think I mentioned to you last time that I was concerned about some puckering up here. After I finished the yoke, I wet it and blocked it, and the Colourwork sort of settled really beautifully, but there was still this puckering here, and I decided that even though I had, wet it and blocked it, so I decided that I would re-knit from here up. So I pulled back and I re-knit because I realized that when I knit the Colourwork, my gauge tends to loosen. Some people go up a needle size. With me, I just loosen my gauge a little bit to make sure that it's got, a good elasticity in there. But I sort of kept that looseness as I knit the yoke, and it just ended up being too loose. I really realized it when I started knitting down the body, that the gauge around the body and the gauge up here were different. So when I finished everything, I just pulled back and re-knit this top portion of the yoke a little bit more conscientiously, keeping in mind my gauge, and it worked out. There is, the puckering has essentially gone. The only thing that happened was that, of course, while I was knitting the sweater, there were markers, and those markers indicated, why does this always happen to me? It always happens to me. Sorry. The markers indicated where the short row for the top of the back, the short rows should happen. You'd short row, you'd knit up to a certain marker, turn, and then go up, purl to the other marker, and then turn. And I didn't have those markers anymore. So I just kind of decided where the middle of the shoulder was and kind of marked those, and I think it worked out. I didn't want to have to go back and try and count, and I didn't even count. I just folded the sweater in half, placed markers, and figured that's where the short rows, that's the perimeter for the short rows. So it's worked out really, really nicely. It ended up with a little bit of looseness, which was what I wanted. And I think it's just going to be one of those sweaters that I want to wear a lot. It's very, very, very cozy. I've knit quite a few yoked sweaters at this point in time, especially over the last 2-3 years. And it's interesting, something that I've noticed that has sort of erupted in the knitting design world is this relationship to short row shaping that I'm not sure how I completely feel about. I just feel like sweaters often have, and I'm not talking about this one specifically, I'm talking about like all the designs that I've seen lately. There's a lot of short row shaping in sweaters these days. Often there's short row shaping at the top here to raise the back and bring the front down a little bit, right? And I think that that's very effective. But there can also be short row shaping in the middle of the back. I've seen a pattern where there was short row shaping after the ribbing at the bottom. And I was just like, do I really need to do 4 sets of short row shaping in a sweater? And I've decided that I don't. Most of the time. So I tend to ignore some of the short row shaping. I actually find I just don't understand the purpose. If you happen to know the purpose of why you'd have short row shaping at the bottom of the back, it could be to lower the back a little bit, to lower the ribbing. My preference is really to have short row shaping here at the top. And if there's anything, maybe short row shaping to create darts for the bust in the front. That's my 2 favorite places to have short row shaping. But I do think it depends on the shape of your body and so forth. But I've just been noticing it's just like there seems to be short row shaping everywhere. And 10 years ago, yoked patterns didn't really have any short row shaping. So I think it's really effective. I just wonder if there's just a little bit too much of it happening right now. I don't know. That's my take on it anyway. One thing I wanted to show you, because I had a question about this Colourwork ring, which I spoke to you about because I loved using it on this sweater. I also used it on the Telia that I made for my friend last late winter spring, which is also a pattern by Jennifer Steingass, and I think I showed it to you last episode as part of the retrospective from 2020. I used this Colourwork ring for both of these sweaters and really enjoyed using it. And somebody asked how one actually uses this. One thing's for sure, I think that this kind of a ring is really most effective for somebody who knits color work in continental style. Because obviously if you've got yarn coming from the other hand, I don't quite know how it would work if you had it there. If you happen to be more of a thrower or an English style knitter, perhaps, if you've used this, perhaps you can chime in below. But I don't knit that way at all. I haven't been able to learn it. I do use it if I have 3 colors happening. I have used it in Colourwork. If I have 3 colors, I usually have 2 here and 1 here that happened on a couple of rows in this sweater, and that works. But I really prefer just to knit continental if it's two color work. And so what I'm going to do is just insert a little video right here of me knitting using this ring so that you can get a sense. I really just put the 2 colors usually not next to each other. I'll do one in the first ring or hole kind of thing and one in the other. And then you just really pick the yarn that you need. And it automatically keeps 1 yarn in front and 1 yarn in the back, which makes for neater floats. That's for sure. I find it easier to manage the actual yarn, and it just seems to work for me. So hopefully that helps. I think it was Lena, you asked me on Instagram about that, so I thought I'd insert it since I was just about to podcast. So yeah, I really like this. It's a prized possession. As I said, I'll tell you who I got it from. It's a handmade ring from Finland. She lives in the north of Finland, and it was definitely a present to myself because it wasn't cheap, and I guard it very carefully because I don't want to misplace it. So I will often keep it in this little container that I have that's like a little macaron. I keep it in here in my knitting bag or in a pouch to make sure that I don't lose it. Because stitch markers can go missing, but you don't want something like that to go missing, right? So that is what I have to say about this lovely sweater. It's only one. I posted it on Instagram yesterday, and I just love it. So if you want to see more pictures of it, you can go over there and have a look. Yeah, and everything just worked out really, really well. And I do really love this yarn. It feels like it's a sweater that I'm going to have for the next many, many years to come. So I really like that. And I'm very curious to see how it wears, but it's just good, honest wool. And I really like it. So before we move on to my works in progress, I did want to share, I forgot to share this last time. This was another present from Santa. This is a pair of earrings that I got from Porterness Studios, who is a knitting related jewelry designer in California. And I got these for myself for Christmas. And they're very sort of stylized knitting related jewelry that she has, really, really nice. And so I got these for myself and I've just really been enjoying them a lot. I hadn't gotten new jewelry for a very, very long time. And it was actually Melissa of Espace Tricot who had another one of her designs as well as a ring, I think. And I thought, let me go see what there is. And I just really, really like these earrings. So I forgot to show them to you last time. But another piece of handmade silver goodness that's knitting related. So in terms of works in progress, I have not organized myself quite enough for this, but I have first a half object here. I was knitting on these socks last time. This is part of the Lucky Dip Cal that my friend Kate of the Hawthorne Cottage Craft is hosting. And this was the yarn that I pulled out for January. I won't be doing it every month. I'm just going to do it whenever I finish the project, and then I'll pick from the pouch where I have all the yarn. And so I'm making these socks, which the pattern is the Honeycomb Cable Socks by Louise Tilbrook. The yarn is Socks Yeah by Coop Knits in the Kunzite colorway, which is this sort of heathery lavender colorway. And I am really, really enjoying this pattern. It's got a little bit of the honeycomb cable going up the middle of the back, and it's got an interesting ribbing here that's a little unusual, combination of knit through the back loop, and there are 2 and 1, and it's a little bit different than a regular ribbing, and it's just really, really pretty, really, really pretty. And I have started the second one. I'm just going up the foot, and I'm not going on these very quickly, mostly because I'm really taken by my other projects. So I work on these here and there, and definitely enjoy working on them. I'm just not. I'm so focused on sweater knitting right now. I'm really in a Colourwork kick. Like, all I can think about is the next Colourwork sweater. So you know, I'm knitting on these whenever I knit on them. I've got the pattern memorized, so you know, I can just pick them up, and yeah. But great little pattern, again, on these wonderful sock blockers by Patricia of Knitography from her farm shop. So you should check her out if you want to perhaps put these on your Christmas list or give yourself something special, because they are very, very special sock blockers, that's for sure. So that's the first work in progress that I have. The second work in progress is a new cast on. I am making the After Party sweater, which is from Yarny magazine number 6. And I did not do this necessarily to join in Kate's second Cal, Kate of the Hawthorne Cottage podcast. She's got another knit along called, I can't actually remember the name of the book, the knit along. I'll put it down here, but essentially it's about knitting from books. And so I am knitting from this Yarny magazine, and I am making myself the After Party sweater, which is by Astrid Troland, which is right there. And it's funny because when I saw it in the magazine when I bought this, I thought, yeah, that's nice. But the first time I saw it and I was really taken by it was when Ellie of Skein Deer had it on her podcast. Well, probably a couple of years ago, because this came out in autumn winter 2018, and I think she made it immediately, and she made it in red with, I think, pale gray color work. And I was like, that is so beautiful. What is that pattern? I realized I actually had it. And then every single time I've seen it since then, I've thought I really need to make that. And then recently, my friend Patricia, Paradise Island, who makes the wonderful project bags, she finished hers and posted on Instagram, and I thought, that's it. That's my next cast on. I was working on this at the time. So I have started that, and I knew exactly what yarn I wanted to use. I wanted to use this yarn, which is the Studio Donegal Darnie in shade number 8809. This is the label. I had gotten this in Ireland when I was visiting in November of 2019. I was there visiting my friend Kate and attending her the Ullin retreat that she and Emma of Woolly Mammoth Fibers were hosting. And we did a little trip. We went to Studio Donegal. Actually, I posted all about that in my YouTube, my podcast at the time. I think it's called Knitting in Ireland. That episode, if you happen to want to go and watch, I took some beautiful footage from the studio of the weavers there. And so I bought this yarn at the time, actually thinking that I probably would make a large shawl, but I ended up buying a sweater quantity just because that's what I tend to do. I can't just buy one skein or two. So I'm glad I did, because it is now becoming a sweater. And I looked for a color. I didn't want quite gray. I wanted something earthy, but so what I did was I looked around my stash. I didn't see anything that really quite worked. And I ended up buying some yarns from Wabi Sabi, my local yarn shop. Right now we can't go there. The footage that you saw at the beginning was actually from before. But I thought, I think we need to see inside a wool shop right now. I know I do. I'm really dying to go inside a wool shop. But I ordered some different yarns that I thought could work, and ended up choosing this one and returning the other two. So this is Jamieson & Smith in their jumper weight, their 2-ply jumper weight, in color 1280, I think. And it's this kind of like minty greeny gray. There's the color right there. So I have paired these two together. I've started the sweater. I am knitting up the body. This one is a bottom up construction, and I'm knitting it on 3.5 millimeter needles. And it has a little bit of color work here at the bottom. I'm almost finished the torso. Then I do the 2 sleeves, and then you join to finish the yoke color work and the neck. So this is going along. I'm really enjoying this a lot. Looking forward to having this sweater as well. And of course I used my ring for this. Not a whole lot to say at this point. It's going really well. And I really like this yarn a lot. I can highly recommend it. It's got an interesting, it's clearly a woolen spun yarn. I wonder if you can see the yarn there. Will it focus on the yarn? There is a ply, but it's got, the 2 yarns have a stickiness to them, as did this, that you just don't find in a superwash yarn, and also it's got a stickiness that I think you're more likely to find in a woolen spun yarn, where the fibers have not been combed to all be in the same direction. So it's got a bit of an airiness, a bit of a fluffiness, and it also has a stickiness to it, which is great for color work. I was a little concerned that knitting on 3.5 was a bit loose for the Jamieson, but because of the stickiness and because it's likely to bloom a little bit, it just works really well. So anyway, this is going swimmingly. What can I say? Really enjoying it, and it's nice to be like just knitting along on the stockinette portion of it. It is being housed in this bag, which I have to say got a little bit dirtied. Where was it? That it was on the floor somewhere, and when I picked it up I was like, ah. So this is my bag that I absolutely adore, sort of a Outlander theme by Harrington Bags, who is Claudia, and Claudia Maheu, and she makes these wonderful bags. I have two of them. I have this one and another one that's a little bit more summery, and this one is just very much an Outlander themed bag, so I tend to use it more in the winter. It somehow makes me think of the winter. And actually appropriate because I just watched the latest season of Outlander on Netflix, which was lots of fun, and there we go. So that was work in progress number 1. At the same time, or number 2 actually, because I had the socks. At the same time that I cast that on, I actually kind of went a little bit on a cast on party, I have to say. I cast on a sweater for Alejandro. I am making the puntal sweater by, and I realize I forgot to check her last name. Her name is Belen. I think it's Gonzalez. Anyway, I'll put it down here. The puntal sweater. She is a Spanish designer, knitter, podcaster who lives in England. She's married to an Englishman, but she has a podcast in Spanish called Tejer en Inglés, which I really enjoy. And she designed this sweater, and I knew when I saw it that I had yarn that was going to that. I needed to buy some to coordinate with it because it is a 3-color sweater. It's striped. It's not a color play sweater per se. For the cowl, it's a striped sweater. And I knew that I wanted to make this for Alejandro. So I had originally bought this yarn, which, as you can see, I was swatching with it. I bought this green yarn by Retrosaria Pomar called Vovô. She's a Portuguese-based yarn producer. I used the Mungo in my Rift, and I really wanted to try the Vovô, which is a sport weight, although it does behave more like a DK weight. I bought everything they had at Wabi Sabi in this green, thinking I would make a sweater for myself or make a sweater for Alejandro. I soon determined that I wanted to make a sweater for him, but I realized, I don't know if I have enough. And then when I saw the puntal sweater, I was like, I definitely have enough for that if I pair it with another color. So I decided to pair it with this burgundy. And I really wanted an oatmeal, but I ended up getting this cream. And when I was swatching, I was like, this is okay, but it's a little too crisp for Alejandro's style. First of all, he tends to wear very earthy tones. And so I was like, So the other day I actually bought another yarn from Wabi Sabi, which I actually think works better. It's kind of it's an oatmeal, and I think I'm gonna put it on and see how it works, but I think I like that more than the crisp cream for him. So essentially it starts with this burgundy color, then it'll have the cream stripe, and then the rest of the sweater will be green. So I started this for Alejandro. I actually finished the first ball of burgundy, only to realize that I think this is going to be a little bit too snug on him. I think that I probably should have gone one size up. I think if I had gauge with the sweater, this would have been fine, but my gauge is a little off, and I thought it was gonna work out fine, but I think I should have gone up one size more. I'm gonna study this a little bit more today, but I'm thinking, I was going to go up a needle size, but I actually like the fabric that I'm getting with the 4mm needles for this. So I think I'm probably going to just rip back and start over. I haven't gotten very far. I did this last weekend, I think on Saturday, and I can pull back and start over. It's not going to be a huge deal. And then I think it'll fit him. I absolutely love this yarn. This, I think, will not be my last time buying this yarn. I think I want to have a sweater in this yarn. It's really, really beautiful. Really like it. And so far, I'm really enjoying the pattern. Belen has laid out the pattern extremely well. I think this would be a really nice pattern for a beginner knitter. It's got some short row shaping in it, but very effectively in the top, in the same way that the Felix does. The Felix sweater, which I made a little while ago and I showed you last podcast, it has a little bit of short row shaping in it, and also in a very effective way to help create sort of a scoop look here in the front. But really, really nicely written pattern, and it's a unisex pattern. So she's got women's sizes and men's sizes as well. So, you know, who knows, maybe at some point I'll make myself a striped version too, or use the construction of the sweater for, you know, just for a simple top-down sweater or something like that. So really enjoying this, but I'm going to enjoy it again because I'm going to start over. I figure, hey, it just means that I get to knit this beautiful yarn up one more time. That's all right. This yarn, actually, that I got to replace the cream is the Estelle Eco Tweed, which is a DK yarn, although the other one is considered sport, but I think it behaves like a DK. And this one actually looks lighter than the other one, but I think because of the way it's plied, it'll fill in. I think it should be fine. I'll have to wait and see, and hopefully show you next time. Now this project, for the moment, is being housed in this bag that I got at Christmas by Antler and Acorn. But I think it will outgrow this bag at some point, but it's just so darn gorgeous. I wanted to put it in there, and I thought it actually kind of matched the sweater. So that is another actual work in progress. But I actually have 2 more projects in 2 more bags. One I cast on, but it's going to have to get recast on. Now you're going to think I'm crazy, and that's okay. I'm okay to wear the label of crazy because I think this is a little crazy, but there is some logic to this. There is some method to this madness. I'll show you this one first. So this is a bag that I made myself at some point. I haven't sewn in a long time. I really do have to get back to it. And in here, I have a needle and yarn mess at the moment. So the yarn that's in here is yarn from Americo, who no longer sells yarn, but her yarn was all different yarns from South America that she had milled in, I think, Peru, and often they're alpaca based. Now this is the Americo Brisa, and I can't remember exactly what the composition of this is, but I'll tell you next time because I'm going to be talking about this again. And I decided to turn this into a ranunculus. Now I talked to you last time about an olive green ranunculus, but in my mind I actually want 2 more ranunculi, or ranunculuses. I have my mauve one and I have a gray one. I've always wanted a cream colored one. And I've always wanted, I thought, either a blue or an olive. So recently somehow I was thinking about this yarn, which is a chignette yarn, and it's supposed to be fingering weight, but it really doesn't behave like a fingering weight. It puffs up and it's much more, I would say, more like a sport DK weight. And I was thinking, what am I going to make with this? It's got a real bouncy feel. And then I thought, why don't I make a ranunculus with this? So I started the ranunculus, but I realized I think I have to go up a needle size because the neck, this is just, I think, too small. And then I ended up with this very strange gap here that is bizarre. So I'm going to start this over again. In my other, and I also have a whole mess of needles here because I was having a bit of a quandary about needle size. And I've decided that I'm going to knit this ranunculus with 6mm needles. And the other one, which is in this beautiful bag that I got from Kristen, is the olive green one, which has not been cast on. It's in here. And what I'm actually intending on doing is knitting both at the same time. And I'll tell you why, because I did have a friend kind of go 2 ranunculus at the same time. And here's the thing. I made 1 ranunculus. I struggled with the yoke because it's a bit mind-boggling. And then I got it and I finished the sweater, which was my mauve one. And then a year later, I cast on the gray one and ended up having the same issues with the yoke. Had to rip back again and start over, and then finally got it. And I thought, I'm going to have the same problem this time. And then if I wait another year for the next ranunculus, I'm going to have the same problem again. So why not do it on both, do the yoke on both right away, get that over with, and then I can knit the bodies whenever it strikes my fancy. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking on casting both at the same time. So this is a bit unusual for me to have almost 4 sweaters kind of on the go. So what I'm hoping to do is to, with the after party, finish the body and then get going a little bit more on the puntal and perhaps finish the yoke increases and then probably start one of the ranunculuses. I don't know. We'll see how it ends up playing out. I'm not very good at having multiple projects on the needles. I tend to choose one, but I'm just so excited about all of these that I just want to get going on all of them. I need more knitting time. So anyway, this is my craziness right now. In addition to having all kinds of Colourwork sweaters floating through my head, yelling at me to be made, just calling their names. I really want to make the Bohus sweater, which was from, I can't remember which line now, perhaps line 7, designed by Carol Feller, which has just Colourwork across and is a drop sleeve construction. So you actually have to steek here, and I've never steeked, so I really want to make that. And I love that sweater ever since I first saw it, actually on a Finnish podcaster who podcasted in English, Minna of Finfrost. She was wearing it and I loved it. Unfortunately, she's not podcasting anymore, which is too bad because I really enjoyed her podcast. The other sweater that I want to make is the Vinterfjell sweater by Ellie of Skeendeer, and that I've decided is going to be in red, so that is going to end up being a little bit of a Christmas sweater for me. So that one I'll wait until the fall probably, but I am hoping this spring to knit the Bohus as well. I'm totally motivated by my color play gal. So I'm like, let's get it all in there, and I'm just really enjoying Colourwork right now. So yeah, so those are some upcoming knits as well. I have leftovers from this sweater. The teal, I only used 2.5 skeins. There's the second half of the third skein, and I'm just trying to figure out what the yardage on this is. 400 meters, so about 425 yards. So it really didn't use a lot, and I didn't make a snug sweater. I knit this on 3.25 millimeter needles. So I still have a skein and a half of that, as well as almost all the white, because it really didn't use a whole lot of white. The least I have is the gray and quite a bit of the wonderful green. And so I have to figure out what I want to make with this. I was thinking of making the Hansel hap, which is a square hap, but I don't think I have quite enough of this to make a square hap. So I'm thinking about possibly making a Vertices Unite. We'll have to see what comes up, but I think I need one more color. So I'll have to see what this becomes, but I was thinking that it would be nice to make a nice shawl of some kind out of this. It could also possibly be a vest. I don't know, but anyway, those are my thoughts with the rest of that yarn. So I think that is just about the end of the knitting content. I have had a question, actually a couple of people have asked me how I store my shawls. So I'll just insert a picture here. I have a bench in the entrance where I have 2 baskets, and essentially I fold the shawls and then roll them and put them in the basket like that. and they just sit in the entrance. And then obviously the ones that I tend to be using often will just end up being sort of thrown on top of the baskets. But I don't have any great way of displaying them. And, you know, there are 4 of us living in a not very big house. So I don't feel like I want to, you know, have them hanging all over the place. Sometimes the ones that are being used the most are sort of sitting on the back of the sofa, for example. But generally, one of the baskets is for the larger shawls and the other basket is for smaller shawls. So those are the ones I'm going to reach for to be under a coat. And then of course, the ones that I'm wearing every day these days with my coat, they're often just hanging on the banister, waiting for the next time I go out. For example, the pink Venezia that I made, I'm wearing a lot these days. It's been perfect. And the what was it called? The Stay Soft shawl is also hanging on the banister along with the Venezia. And so, yeah, I don't have any real way of any fancy way of storing them. In the winter, I do put them into a tub, a Rubbermaid tub. Not in the winter, in the summer. Sorry, when I put them away, I put them in a Rubbermaid tub, along with all my other winter clothing. Any wool that we have goes into Rubbermaid tubs, and they are stored like that for the summer months. And then in the fall, the Rubbermaid tubs get filled with summer clothes, and the winter clothes and winter, you know, accessories come out. So that's really all I have to say about storing my shawls. About the sock pattern that I use generally for vanilla socks. And there's not a whole lot to say to that. I tend to knit toe up on my socks. Actually, what I should have done is brought down a sock, but I'll just use this as an example. In my vanilla socks, not this one, I tend to cast on with the, I think it's called Judy's Magic Cast On, or is it the Turkish Cast On? I'm not quite sure which one I use, but there are different cast-ons for when you start at the toe, and I usually cast on 14 stitches. I increase, you know, until 60 or 64. I knit along here, and then I use the Wendy D. Johnson Basic Gusset Heel, usually. And that is a great book to have, actually. And what I'll do is put a picture of it here so that you can see it. It's got just really good basic heel constructions in it, as well as other patterns. And then I just go up the foot once I've finished the heel, and I tend to do a 1x1 rib most of the time in my socks. And that's really the construction. There are so many different ways of starting socks, whether you go toe up or cuff down, stitch counts, heel types. It's kind of something that you have to try different ones until you find one that you really, really like, and just stick with it. For your vanilla socks. Of course, if you're trying somebody else's pattern, depending on the kind of construction, you might just follow them. But even still, you know, I ended up going with this person's stitch count, which was different from mine, but I could have just gone with my stitch count and really just used the stitch pattern and done my own thing. I decided to follow her instructions for everything, but I really could have just done my own thing and just used the stitch pattern. So sock knitting is kind of one of those things. It can be a little bit daunting to start with, and then once you've done one pair, you've just got over the biggest hurdle, and then after that, it's really tweaking and finding something that works for you. That's how I see it anyway. So those are a couple of questions that I've had recently that I just thought I wanted to address, and hopefully I've addressed them well enough for you. Speaking of socks, and I actually just went to get some, and so I could have shown you actually. I think I told you last time that I made this pair of alpaca socks, do you remember? And that one had fallen apart, and I'm going to show it to you in a minute. But here you can see the basic gusset heel that I tend to use from Wendy D. Johnson. I prefer a gusset personally, but what I was going to tell you is that in January, I took a workshop through Espace Tricot with Aruna, who is the owner of Buku. Buku bags, wonderful Buku bags. I actually realized that I bought a pouch of hers that I use for lipsticks long before she was known in the knitting community, but when she was actually selling at craft shows. So I had gone to the One of a Kind show, I think it was called, the One of a Kind show in Toronto. I used to go and every year visit my friend Dana, and then we'd go to the show together. And she was selling at that show, and I ended up buying a little lipstick pouch of hers. So she then went on to have a good website and started making things for knitters, and now is very much into visible mending. So she gave a workshop through Espace Tricot, and I think that was her first Zoom workshop ever. It was absolutely fabulous. Espace Tricot is sort of moving into these Zoom workshops, which are great. I had taken another one that I told you guys about with Carolyn Bloom on sort of Sachiko style embroidery on knitting, which was mind-blowing and very, very interesting. She's actually giving another one at Espace Tricot, like I don't know when, but if not today, then sometime very soon. So I took that workshop, and then I took the one with Aruna on visible mending, which I've never ever really mended socks, because I've always given them to my mother-in-law or to somebody else, because there was something about it that I just had a mental block with. So it was really great to do that, really great to learn. It's actually quite fun. I'm not very good at it. That's my conclusion, but that's okay. So here is the other alpaca sock, which had a hole in it. And here is my fixing of it. Very, very beginner looking, and I'm kind of okay with that, as long as it keeps the sock together and I can continue to wear the sock. So she was teaching a weaving method of darning socks, as well as a twin stitch. This is one of my Franken socks. I have two pairs of Franken socks. This is the second pair of Franken socks that I made that I love, but I somehow ended up with a hole, whoops, in one of them. Not even on a heel or the foot, like on the side of the foot. Very, very strange. I don't know if the yarn had gotten caught somewhere and it created the hole, or this was where I had joined and it wasn't joined well. I haven't actually checked that. That could actually, nope, that's not the problem, because the joint is on the bottom of the foot. So I don't know why, but I ended up with a hole there. So I have now fixed that, so they're even more Franken-socky. And then I started fixing this other pair that is clearly thinning in the heel. So I have this beautiful pair of fondant fiber yarn socks. I can't remember if this is something, I Heart Bees pattern, but the heel is starting to thin. Sorry, my son's getting ready to go to work, so you're hearing him walk around, but I'm just going to continue anyway. So it's really thinning here. So she was showing us how to do the twin stitch, and I started doing it, but I have to say, I think I need to practice on larger yarn, on thicker yarn, something like worsted. I started doing the twin stitch, but I was really struggling to see where the yarn had to go because it's just so fine. So I think I'm going to hold off on this. I probably just won't wear these for a while. I'll do a little bit of the twin stitch on a worsted weight sweater or something like that, and then go back and fix this. And I actually really like it with the orange, so I'll probably do the orange there. So that was a really, really great workshop, very, very useful, and it was fun. It was fun to be with other people. Zoom classes are great. It's wonderful that you can just do it from your home, because obviously I would probably not drive all the way to Montreal to do that. They tend to be also, I think, a little bit more reasonably priced, because they're not having to bring someone in to give the training. They're not having to rent the space. Like, you know, there are advantages to it. Obviously, there's not quite as much engagement as if you were in class and able to show somebody your work. But still, I think really, really worth it. Both classes that I've taken with Espace Tricot I've really enjoyed. And so, yeah. So that's the end of the knitting content, I would say, for this episode. Other than that, January came and went. It's funny, I've heard a lot of people say that that was the longest January ever, and I have to say January flew by for me. I had a great January, mostly. We had some wonderful snowfalls, so there was some snowshoeing, which you'll see footage. Did I put it at the beginning? I don't know. You'll either see footage at the beginning or the end. Been snowshoeing a few times, and the family's been skiing a little bit, skating as well, and just walking in the wintry goodness. It's been quite lovely. There's been a lot of movie watching in January as well. Like, we're doing a weekly family movie night, and everybody has put a name of like 1 to 4 names of movies in a little pot, and every week we pick one. And we've watched Arrival, which I really, really liked that film. That was my choice, and it was I think the third time I've seen that movie, and I just still really, really like that movie with Amy Adams, and it's just a very intelligent and really interesting movie. I really, really like it. We watched The Last Emperor, which was long but interesting. We also watched an anime movie that my daughter had chosen called A Silent Voice, which we all really enjoyed. It was really good. We also watched The Great Escape, the movie with Steve McQueen from many, many years ago, which was really great to watch, and my son in particular really enjoyed it. And so it's just been a movie watching month, and I watched The Great Gatsby with Robert Redford and Mia Farrow, which I actually thought was very well done. I was wondering if they would have picked up on some of the nuances in The Great Gatsby. That was oodles of fun. And then that ended up taking me to watching The Paper Moon with Ryan O'Neal and Tatum O'Neal. I watched some really old movies. Well, not really old, it was from the 70s, but it was interesting because I remember watching Paper Moon. That was one of the first movies I ever saw as a kid. And so it was interesting to see it again. It wasn't the best movie ever, but it was still really enjoyable to see again. So it was really very, very much a screen time, but watching things that we really wanted to watch. Obviously, we watched, I think I already mentioned The Queen's Gambit to you. I watched the 5th season of Outlander. Kim's Convenience has a new season on CBC Gems, so we've been watching that. Yeah, it's been really fun. Then I also have read a couple of books. Just finished, and it's very short book, so it doesn't take long to listen to. Wolf Pack by Abby Wambach. That was actually a really fabulous little book, and I've bought a hard copy that I'm hoping to share with the young people that are in my life, my daughter, my son, and my son's girlfriend, because it's just a really great little book about finding women's place in the world, and it's soccer related because she was the captain of the American women's soccer team, and very accomplished, obviously. And it's just a really great little inspirational book. I really enjoyed listening to it, and I think that those 3 young people will enjoy it as well. The other book that I read was The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, which has been quite a celebrated book. It's a very, very interesting premise of a book about twin sisters who live in an unknown town in Louisiana. It's barely even a town. It's not even on the map. And it's a town that is full of very pale people, pale Black people. So people who could pass as white. And so these 2 sisters who could pass, it's about the trajectories that each one of them takes. One of them decides to pass as white and the other one not. And it's a very, very interesting premise of a book. I think it's a book very much about exposing the pros and cons of passing. There's also a bit around transgender in the book, and also the passing as another gender. It's really interesting. there was a part of the book that I found very dissatisfying, and I haven't quite figured out what. And I'm thinking that I was expecting more from the author than perhaps the author was really intending to give. And that's fair. They're writing the book. They're not here to answer the world's problems. I think the book did a really good job of exposing some of the issues, but there were resolutions that didn't happen in the book that I guess I was kind of hoping for. But it was well written, well told, well read story on Audible, and yeah, and that's basically what I read in January. Yeah, so it's been overall a fun month. There's been some family stuff going on, but I'm going to wait and see where things go before I really talk about it here on the podcast. If you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen in my stories that my mother had some little medical issues, and we're just waiting to see a specialist to see what happens with that. But I'm actually hopeful that it may not actually be as serious as I thought it might be. So I'll tell you more about it in the future, if depending on which way things go. But we're just going to assume right now that it's not going to go in a horrible direction for now. Anyway, I'm sorry if I'm cryptic, but I'm just going to leave it like that. And yeah, I think that's all I have to share with you today of the last 3 weeks and the knitting, the making, the experiences of January and the early February. And I'm going to leave it there with you today. So I hope to see you again in the next 3 weeks or so. And who knows, if I finish that Colourwork sweater really quickly, you might see me before then. If not, I'll see you when I see you. And I hope this podcast has found you well. Cheers to you. Happy February, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hey Yoda. Hi. You didn't come on the podcast. I thought you might come on the podcast and say hello to everybody. No? You just want to sleep.